live. I need to make sure I'm not coughing. Great, good. Well, not great, not good, etc., etc., because of the current state of politics. But you know. Anyways, put the timer on. God dang it, forgot about that part. Yeah. Anyways, do I even want to preface this with anything? I feel like I don't know. I might drag along for a little bit before I launch into the main event, but I probably should. What's happened then? I guess I can get right into it. Here, let's open this news link and then I can go check this out. Uh yeah. Wait, is there no Okay, there's a transition for whatever reason. It's just kind of OBS flipped out. Yeah, an insane schizo right winger assassinated two Democratic politicians, I think. Or no, one Democratic politician and their husband. This is the local report from the day of, I think. Yeah, June 14th. Two state lawmakers were shot. I guess only one died. And their spouses were shot by someone impersonating a police officer. We have more details now, but this is just the initial report. Representative Melissa Hortman and her husband were fatally shot in their home. Senator John Hoffman and his wife are out of surgery and are recovering. So thankfully, both of them didn't die. But the suspect, Vance Bolter or Belter, however you pronounce that, who's dressed as a police officer, is considered armed and dangerous after shooting at police. Police are asking for the public's help in locating this man. He's still at large. So the what's what here? Basically, this is the guy. This is the guy that did it. This guy was like the chief of some security company, worked with a private security company, and presumably had months of planning behind this because he had a real police officer's uniform and a real squad car. And so was capable of convincingly enough impersonating a police officer to get somebody to open the door so he could shoot them. And this guy is a registered Republican, and he voted for Trump. This is like far right violence 101. This guy, like, literally, you could not construct a more one-to-one parallel of a nation descending into fascist dictatorship if you tried. An increase in street violence from the right, backed and sort of played coy around by various media and government institutions, while this guy assassinates Democratic lawmakers. Authorities are looking for 57-year-old Vance Bolter. I'm just going to call him Bolter in connection with the shootings. He was said to be impersonating police and wearing a rubber mask at the time of the shootings, but now he could be wearing a cowboy hat and dark-colored shirt or something. All right, cool. He was arrested? Really, he was? Do we have that? Also, welcome back, Globalized My Agenda. It's been a little while. 2 hours ago? Oh, shit. Can somebody provide a link to that? Why these two reps in particular, aside from just being Democrats, is clearly premeditated, not just some mental health break, perhaps to send a message or spark more unrest. No, as I have, I have some links prepared. Thank you, Globalize My Agenda. I have some links prepared, for this, this particular thing. He targeted these people, number one, because they were Democrats. Number two, because the Democrats in the state of Minnesota, despite all they've accomplished, have a one-seat majority. This guy shooting a Democratic representative dead actually undoes that majority. The Republicans now, I think, either are tied with or have the majority in the Minnesota state House of Representatives. This shifted the balance of power in the whole state in favor of Republicans. And these were not the only two people on this guy's actual fucking hit list. Let's go to Reuters here. Again, this is from earlier. Verification required. Yeah, okay. Thank you. Here we go. Minnesota manhunt underway for suspect in deadly shooting of Democratic state lawmakers. As this link points out, this guy has been arrested. But first, I want to highlight something here that's very relevant. Let's see. He fled on foot. Law enforcement officials said the suspect abandoned a vehicle that looked like a police SUV, in which officers found a manifesto and a target list of other politicians and institutions. This guy was not stopping with a couple of lawmakers. Let's see. Where does it specify names on the list? Ah, yes, here we go. ABC News, also citing law enforcement officials, said the list included dozens of Minnesota Democrats, including Governor Tim Walz, U.S. Representative Ilhan Omar, U.S. Senator Tina Smith, and Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison, in addition to, I don't know if they name it here, a number of abortion and women's health care providers. Yeah, here we go. The list found in the vehicle included 70 names, including abortion providers and lawmakers in Minnesota and other states. As well as, I think, some prominent people that were going to be at the No Kings rally. There was sort of a controversial order given, or public safety recommendation given by Governor Walz at the behest of the Minnesota Public Safety Department, because they had the concern that this guy might show up and start killing protesters. Properly wrong in the head, this one. Yeah, I really, you really do have to be a special kind of fucked up to go and do something like this. Now, to address something that happened actually in my Discord the other day, I commented that I think, like, oh yeah, the cops are omega in on it, which I actually think that might be a little bit of a lefty misinfo, because of something the Minnesota State Patrol posted that ended up just being them being like, oh yeah, he might be targeting people at the No Kings rally. But without context, without any context next to the post that they gave, it looked like they were like, oh yeah, we found a bunch of No Kings flyers in this guy's car. Clearly he was Democrat Antifa or something. But fret not, because the police are not the only ones that I suspected were onto that narrative. Obviously, we saw the right wing online run with this. Oh, this guy, fucking mentally ill, posed as a cop and assassinated Democrats and had a list of other Democrats in his car. Must be a Democrat. And of course, they know they're lying. They love when the far right does political violence against their opponents. They're doing the really transparently dishonest we disavow shtick. But there was, oops, whoop. Don't worry about that. Maybe he was a communist. Yeah, that's the line they were going for. In fact, I went through the trouble of looking for this clip that I found. Shout outs to Ken Klippenstein, one of the greatest to ever do it. CNN, the same news outlet that is also reporting that this guy's been arrested, has been participating in the fucking this guy was actually a Democrat conspiracy theory. Let's have a listen. Here's CNN fueling the baseless theory, linking the alleged Minnesota assassin to Governor Tim Walz. It's a very confusing motive because this guy was appointed to a political position by Tim Walz. This is just a lie. This is not true, like even remotely. So you have to try to figure out where he is with a lot of confusing different messages. This is only intended to sow doubt. Let's listen to the clip.
It's a very confusing motive because this guy was appointed to a political position by Tim Walz. So now he's attacking Democrats. So you have to try to figure out where he is with a lot of confusing different messages.
These news outlets fucking disgust me. All right. The only reason you would say, oh, it's really confusing is because you're trying to manufacture the confusion. CNN knows what kind of institutional position they have to shape the narrative. That why do you think they've been moving to the right? Yeah, it's fucking news is all just propaganda nowadays. They know that there's no evidence of this, which is why they don't cite any evidence. If there was evidence that this guy, if there was any evidence that this guy was a Tim Walz appointee or affiliated with the Democratic Party, do you have any fucking idea how hard the media would be tweaking and crashing out over it, providing like receipts over and over and over again? They would plaster that shit nonstop. But this is the most they can get away with, is the like, oh well, we don't know, it's kind of confusing, and that's like all just to kick up dust, to throw dirt in people's eyes, so they have a hard time discerning what is or isn't true, right? This is like the post-truth world shit. The danger of like lies like this isn't just that they're blatantly false, it's that they're intended to disguise what the truth even is. They're intended to inject so much uncertainty that you can just get away with saying anything. This is part of that. And CNN is I guess as this guy says, a fucking joke. you know the guy was a registered Republican who had a history of working with like private security and contractors and such. But now let's take a look at the details of the arrest, I suppose. Here are all the state and federal charges that this guy faces. Facing both state and federal charges. He's currently in federal custody. Acting U.S. Attorney Joe Thompson said on Monday the federal case will likely proceed first. Can't wait for them to like drop the charges or something. They probably won't actually do that, but Jesus. Federal count 1, stalking. Count 2, stalking. Murder, firearms offense. Okay, cool. Murder in the second degree. What a fucking joke. Do you have any idea the kind of premeditation that's necessary for you to get your hands on equipment that like convincingly imitates the police, like a relatively speaking trusted institution in government, and like find a fucking opposition politician, go up to their house and shoot them dead? That is not second degree murder. Oh, wait, what? State charges. Wait a minute. Okay, hold on. Here's another thing that CNN is doing. Additionally, Bolter will face first-degree murder charges in Minnesota. Minnesota doesn't have the death penalty, so the max sentence would be life in prison without parole. I am okay with this. That is fine. It's common practice for the office to charge second-degree murder to secure a warrant as quickly as possible, which occurred in this case. Okay, interesting. I was gonna say that, like, why don't, like, it is really weird that CNN isn't highlighting the first-degree murder charge. They're like, oh yeah, he only assassinated Democrat politicians, so, second-degree murder. I have a question. If killing a CEO makes you a terrorist, what does killing an elected official make you? It depends on the political affiliation of the elected official. If the elected official that you are killing is left-wing, then you become a martyr for the right and they call you a patriot, and the narrative gets manufactured around that. If you kill a right-wing politician, you are a super terrorist, and they fucking consider amending the Constitution specifically so that you don't get a fair trial. But ultimately they just skip the part about amending the Constitution and don't give you the trial anyway. What's going on here? Hold on. I have to... They call you a gay left-winger? Yeah, but then they also say it was based, actually. See, the right wing loves when this shit happens. Think about the way that the right wing talks about January 6th, right? Where simultaneously they will say it was actually a bunch of like left-wing infiltrator counter protesters and something, but also they were patriots and it was based. They always construct that kind of narrative about it. Do I have the right thing? You know what? I'm not gonna worry about that. Sorry, chat on the screen is a little bit more translucent than I would like it to be, but I don't know how much I can do about that right now because that requires some more involved editing. Look, whatever. He's been arrested. He's going to jail. But the problem with this is that a lot of the institutions that are responsible for like maintaining the public order and whatever and delivering the news and whatever else, you know, all the institutions that liberal democracy relies on are to varying extents in on this. CNN has been moving right. Every other news outlet has been moving right. The police have connections to local militias. Look, it may not be actually, you know, the case that the police department was overtly in on this, but it is still true that the you know, most police departments have either political sympathies or like friendly relationships with far right extremist groups and militias, right? When relations like that exist, it's much easier for them to pull off this kind of stunt, this kind of like political assassination and assassination attempt. This guy had more targets like on the ready. He'd been planning this for months. You can't get that kind of police equipment and that kind of like well, I guess just the means to convincingly impersonate a police officer. You can't do that if you don't have some inside connections and to the, you know, the department that you're trying to impersonate effectively, right? Store got looted during our protest. Nazi infiltrators trying to give us a bad name. Well, you see, we do that. We do call that out because in those cases it's genuinely true. Think back to the Black Lives Matter protests in 2020. There were a number of instances where there were people caught on camera destroying storefronts and destroying property just wantonly, seemingly for no reason. They were cops and feds in disguise. They were plants from the government to break shit and blame it on the left-wing protesters. And, you know, left-wingers and socialists and liberals, whoever was sympathetic to the protests, tried their hardest to yell about that. But none of the fucking news listened. Because what this is about at the end of the day is that the right wing has the power. They have the institutional capture to manufacture the narrative, and the left doesn't. The effectiveness of these tactics is mostly determined by the power available to the group using them, right? None of the right wing's political agenda would work if they didn't already have like massive institutional capture behind them. Think about the difference between how the Republicans in America behave now that they have their hands on basically uncontested power at the federal level, and how they behaved in like the 2010s, in the 2000s, whatever. The Republican Party was a bunch of slinking, dishonest, whiny bitches that looked weak and pathetic. That's why Trump had such an easy time ascending to power within the Republican Party. They were nothing. They were nobody. The Democrats were just ineffective at using power when they did have it. The Republicans were really ineffective out of power, but they started playing meaner. They started getting more effective when they were in power. And as a result, they've now figured out ways to basically shut the Democratic Party out from having power again. You know? And when I say in power, I don't just mean electoral power, because we remember Joe Biden was president for 4 years. There was a 4-year span where the Republicans didn't have a complete hold on government. The problem was Republicans are the party of, the far right, which means capital. They have capital funding them, which means they could capture every other institution. They had already captured most of the police departments. The FBI was really sympathetic to Trump during the investigations. Hell, there were Trump-appointed judges that were like dragging their feet for him. All the news outlets are funded by these same billionaires that contribute money to Republicans. So of course the news is going to bail over to the right with them, right? Meanwhile, the Democrats in power did what exactly? I'm seriously asking, what did they do? They had a little show hearing about January 6th that everybody immediately forgot about. The Democrats just have don't have the kind of power, or are not willing to use their power to message in a meaningful way that supports the left, because the Democrats are not the left. The police and other such institutions overwhelmingly believe in some sort of natural hierarchy, so of course they're going to lean right as fuck. Yeah, and the police were created in the United States. The police as an institution were created to catch slaves, to catch runaway slaves. Of course they're going to be like the vanguard of the far right, you know? And of course, in the 1910s and 20s, many of the riots we hear about from those time periods where, you know, there were workers being shot dead in the streets for protesting for higher wages and trying to go on strike to exercise some of the leverage they had as laborers, those riots were instigated by the cops. They're what's known as cop riots to historians because the violence was one-sided. It was the state, through the police, exercising violence against the population. If violence was ever bilateral, you usually hear about that. Or rather, it will often get framed as though, you know, the protesters had the bulk of the agency in instigating the violence. But you only need to have like a extremely cursory understanding of government institutions to understand that what makes them government institutions is that they have the monopoly on violence. Violence only happens if they say it happens. You know? And the reason violence like this, here, let me go back. The reason that violence like this occurs is because there are many institutions that have either directly or indirectly permitted it to happen. Like I said, either through, you know, them being like, we support this kind of ideology, or through passively ceding ground to and constructing the narrative that leads to this ideology. Right? That's why this guy being like a far righter is so relevant to the motivation behind this assassination. Of course he's a far righter. He's going and shooting Democrats in the Minnesota State House of Representatives and Senate, right? There's honestly, there is actually not really a way for me to talk about how you would address something like this without introducing terminology and language that might actually get me banned from Twitch, or that would run me into some hot water, right? Like, if the Republicans leave power again, they can, if the Republicans leave power, they can never be allowed to hold it again under any circumstance. Whatever form that takes, honestly, at this point, you have so much leeway to act against the Republican Party because they create this kind of person. They create this kind of mental illness and insanity that leads to, like, yeah, let's go assassinate the political opposition because, I don't know, like, they believe that gay kids should be allowed to not get beaten by their parents or something. Like, legitimately, I'm pulling language from Vouch, you know, Vouch accolades exposed. We need to go so hard. There needs to be such a fucking cultural revolution of like left capture of the political culture in this country that historians in the future need to look back on this and question if it was necessary. You know, like think of an ascendant Nazi party in Germany, right? Think of 1937, 1938 Germany. They're posturing. They've just done the Anschluss. They're you know, they want Czechoslovakia. They're posturing about Poland. They're talking about how the Jews are ruining society. Street violence is escalating. Politicians in the opposition are no longer safe. They're being arrested arbitrarily for no reason. How much action against the Nazi party and against Germany under the control of the Nazi party is justified to make sure they never hold power again? Like, how far are you willing to take that? Because that's the moment that we're in right now. However far you'd be willing to take it against the Nazis in the 1930s leading up to World War II is about as far as we need to be willing to take it against the Republicans right now, today, in America. Because otherwise, you know, there's not going to be like a world war necessarily where the United States experiences such a crushing defeat as like Nazi Germany did to basically rescue the rest of the like liberal democratic world. Yeah, the Allied powers would have been justified in just being like, all right, fuck it, that's it. We're occupying your country again because you can't learn a fucking lesson, you know? Kind of like how other countries had been tariffing us and have, I think still have some tariffs on us. Like, that would be justified. It like bringing down the entire American economy. Small price to pay so that the Republican government can't fucking kill millions. And this, like, again, I'm extrapolating this into much larger issues, but this is a very real component of that. The decaying state of like institutions and their capability to prevent political violence from occurring, or even their willingness to do so. The rapid radicalization of people to the right with no counter from the left, because there is no left. A consolidation of power, capital, wealth, whatever, upwards, that just makes life miserable for everybody. Yeah, if this, like, there's going to be more of this guy. This is going to happen more. This is not just going to be a one-time thing. You know? The right wing has already been, like, on Twitter manufacturing the narrative that this guy, this guy is actually Antifa Democrat Satan. But then, like, obviously they're snickering. They can't hold a straight face while they're saying this because they know they're lying and they revel in it. And they're going to be able to get away with that narrative, especially if CNN is already on board with that framing. There is going to be another Vance Bolter. There will be several more Vance Bolters. Yeah. This country's going to shit, man. This fucking country, dude. Oh my god. At 6 a.m. Okay, we got some minute by minute, hour by hour details of what happened after the fact. It's not just the US, we have a bunch of far-right riots in Northern Ireland. That makes sense, right? Like, the far right is pretty ascendant worldwide. And look, it's kind of like, from a political science perspective, when there's a lot of disillusionment and disapproval of a liberal government, and I don't mean liberal like the Liberal Party, I mean liberal like liberal capitalism, then people are going to get angry. They could get angry in one of two directions. They could go to the far right, they could go to the far left. But the problem is, in places like America, places like the UK, the entire media ecosystem is engineered specifically to turn people away from the far left. So where do they turn? They turn to the far right. So, like, a lot of the civil unrest that you're going to see where it gets really violent is going to be the far right. A lot of it's going to be very nationalist, especially, in a place like Northern Ireland. I have no reason to believe that it'd be much else. Because, like, the far left threatens capital and the far right doesn't. So capital is going to fund the far right because they know that, like, it's going to go to one of those two places eventually. They'd rather forestall any sort of uprising or revolution from the left as long as they can. Yeah. Turn on BBC, the only person you see criticizing both Labour and Tories is Nigel Farage. Yeah. God, it's got to be pretty bleak over there, too. Anyways. Oh, yeah, Ken Klippenstein actually, I showed that clip from CNN that Ken Klippenstein mentioned on Twitter. But Ken Klippenstein also has an exclusive piece. He apparently, this guy's resume was leaked, and Klippenstein got a hold of it. My man, again, he's putting in that work. Check this out. Exclusive. Accused Minnesota assassin's resume. Vance Bolter's CV touts his emotional intelligence. I've obtained a copy of the alleged assassin Vance Bolter's resume from a recruiter, and I'm posting it in its entirety here. The document is peppered with corporate speak touting things like his emotional intelligence and experience in senior leadership roles managing multi-million-dollar budgets. we might take a look at the raw resume in a minute, but I want to read this article because Ken Klippenstein is the GOAT. Vance says he held management roles at large food-related companies like Nestle, Del Monte, 7-Eleven, and Johnsonville Sausage. I've never heard of this company. Since 2021, he says he is the CEO and co-founder of an organization called Red Lion Group, identified elsewhere as a private security firm operating in Africa. I wonder what the fuck kind of work they would be doing. Could tell he was of resources by his name. It's a very establishment money kind of name. It is kind of crazy that you can just tell that. Well, of course, I think you could probably tell by the fact that he was able to do this at all. Like I said, it takes considerable time, planning, and resources to be able to convincingly impersonate a police officer and assassinate a politician. Connections to South Africa by Bolter. Oh, yeah, that is a Dutch name, isn't it? Well, at least he would probably be South African and not Dutch. I gotta protect the integrity of my homie 1v3 and his national identity or something. No mention of the Democratic Republic of the Congo or Africa or private security as have been reported elsewhere. Resume says he's focused on expanding the company new markets, representing the company investor meeting and industry events. So he's like a fucking he's Afrikaner. He's a fucking executive for like, I don't know, some Metal Gear shit. According to police, Bolter reportedly left behind a list of other targets, including abortion facilities and politicians who are abortion rights advocates. Religious and political associations are absent from his resume, with perhaps one exception: a reference to a defunct private Catholic school, Cardinal Stritch University in Wisconsin, where he said he holds a doctorate in leadership. Made up ass discipline. Nonprofit disclosure records list Vance as president of an organization called "You Give Them Something to Eat," a phrase that appears in the Bible. I believe this is like a shell company or like a just like some nothing nonprofit, probably constructed for tax purposes. Where is it? I thought there was a screenshot of this somewhere. I don't know if I'll be able to find it. Maybe this? Yeah, here, look. Turn private foundation. Where's the name of it? Yeah, You Give Them Something to Eat Inc. And then there's somewhere on here where it's like, yeah, look at this. You see this? This is a financial form. Revenue and expenses per books. Net investment income, adjusted net income, disbursable for charity purposes. All of it is blank. It had no assets. It's all like some shell shit. Did it spend more than $100 during the year? No. For political purposes, particularly. Okay, yeah, that's enough of that. In a 2019 comment posted by him on LinkedIn, Vance asks people to pray for the political future of the United States, which is pretty ambiguous. I don't think that indicates much one way or the other, but I don't know, depending on the content of it. I mean, we know he's a Republican and that he voted for Trump. I think the election is going to have more of an impact on the direction of our country than probably any election we've been a part of, or will be a part of for years to come. Blood can't spell. That's 2 words, idiot. So I'm just very big on telling people to be a part of the process and vote your values and be a part of this adventure. We're all a part of living in the United States of America. But you spelled it right that time. So he's an educated idiot type. Yes. My intention in publishing his resume is to provide people with whatever factual information I can. As usual, law enforcement's selective disclosure of information is feeding viral conspiracy theories that accounts like this might help to dispel. Anyways, decide for yourself. Maybe that should be the motto of this newsletter. I don't want this to be a decide for yourself kind of newsletter, Ken. I want you to be based and tell people, like, yeah, that's like, this is what it is, right? Obviously, people are going to form their own opinions one way or the other. Yeah, also another thing I didn't mention earlier, but does factor into how police departments and news agencies are complicit in this type of activity is that they will very, very selectively publish manifestos or personal details of somebody, who fucking assassinates a politician. They do the same thing sometimes with school shooters and terrorists. Remember, fucking every single time that there's some far right terrorist in Europe or America who drives like a car into a crowd of people and kills a bunch, they'll be like, now we don't know what his political motivations are, and it's like, okay, so it's like a fucking white supremacist far right dickhead. But if it's a left winger, they'll like scramble, they'll be all over that shit. You know? In fact, there were a couple instances where this exact thing happened, where there was a manifesto attached to the shooting incident, and not only did certain news agencies and police departments not publish it, I believe with God, there's so many school shootings in the United States, it's fucked up. I can't remember which one it was. They not only didn't publish the manifesto, they also had the fucking gall to claim that it wasn't politically motivated. Which is the same thing that's going on here in like not publishing any of his background. Again, this it's so fucking cooked. It's so fucking cooked. Look at this. Look, the fucking Minnesota police. Okay, never mind. No, I take it back. The police were in on this narrative, like in a more dedicated sort of way. The Minnesota State Patrol Chief, Colonel Christina Bogojevich. I don't know. I'm not Eastern European. Said the police had found flyers in the suspect's vehicle with no kings printed on them, but that he had. Oh wait, no. Okay, that he had no direct links. But oof, Jesus. All right. Thankfully, we are in the lefty misinfo timeline for that one. Had no direct links to the thousands of nationwide No Kings protests on Saturday against President Trump's policies. Whew. God, I was ready to be so fucking mad if the police department was saying that. Targeted attack against state lawmakers. Trump disavowed. To be fair, I actually think that Trump was like, wow, that's pretty bad. I don't think, like... I think Trump is just kind of, he doesn't care about much of anything, but it would genuinely surprise me if Trump said anything that indicated some kind of support for this. Like, I genuinely don't think he's enough of an ideologue to support this, even on a latent level. Let's see. Nothing much else about this. I guess that's kind of it for the details of the story itself, right? Fucking, at least they have him in custody. Incredibly lucky to be alive. Yeah, this is Senator John Hoffman, Minnesota State Senator John Hoffman, survived the shooting, as did his wife. And they take a moment to gluck the law enforcement. Great. Yeah, I don't know. I guess I just need to reiterate that, like, there's almost no degree of institutional action against the Republican Party and billionaires and the owning class in this country that would be unjustified in, like, well, turning the fucking country around, because the country has to have decayed to a significant degree for stuff like this not only to be possible, but to be, like, kind of predictable in this kind of media environment. Like, the media capture and political capture by the far right is what led to this, straightforwardly. If you don't have political capture by the far right in government institutions, or the media capture by the far right in media institutions, you don't get assassinations like this. It is literally that simple. Like, you could peel back the curtain and say, like, you know, the nature of these relationships are very complicated in how the capture takes place and how the consent is manufactured. But if you don't have that, you don't have the assassinations, and that part of it is very simple. And that's why that sort of political capture takes place. It's all a projection of power. This guy is a foot soldier for the Republican Party. Irrespective of the intent or knowledge of either party, this guy is doing the work of the Republican Party in furthering their political capture of the United States, their consolidation of power, and in bullying the opposition into submission. Not an especially difficult task, given that it's the Democrats. You know, he didn't really need to do this, but, you know, he did. Everybody doesn't act optimally in these kinds of situations, but there's a very clear, you know, path being walked here. Anyways. Ugh. God, I guess I like, for some of this stuff, I'm like, I don't even know if I want to make that a segment, but I kind of have to, don't I? Like, it's too relevant to not make it a segment, you know? Especially because this is a moment where you look at it and you're like, fuck it, maybe Mao was right, or or something like that. You know, maybe you do just need to go Joker mode the moment you get in power again, and like lock up every single Republican politician. Like, all right, that's it, fucko. You broke a million laws, and you killed trans children. You arrested the political opposition, and you participated in stochastic terrorism to get people to assassinate the political opposition where you were only arresting them. So you're going away, you're going in the box, you're going in the oubliette. Yeah. Now I've talked about some shit that is like extremely distressing. Let's talk about some shit like relatively shortly that gives me life. All right. Taken from my own Twitter account, self-plagiarism detected. Fucking how many layers are we on right now? Nice meme. Anyways, saw this video where ICE agents. Actually, let's just watch. Let's just watch. Maybe let's not watch. Actually, you know what? I'll watch. We won't play audio. No audio, but we will watch. There's some language that will flag this content on Twitch and YouTube. So the ICE agents come out and they start rushing them. Tubby over there telling people, I think they're telling people like go away, basically, like get on the sidewalk over there. And now they're just kind of, I don't know, posturing. This is, by the way, this is the detention facility, the ICE detention facility, where Newark Mayor Ross Baraka was arrested before he unfortunately lost the New Jersey governorship primary to a fucking joke of a politician that supports the missing middle. Of course, it would be New Jersey. Oh yeah, I don't know. People saw that earlier. I think it's like right here. You can kind of see. Maybe not. Maybe it's one of these other instances. The ICE agents tase somebody at some point in this video. It's kind of hard to pick it out with no sound though. Okay, they have retreated behind the gates again. Let's see where was the Oh, okay, that's like a cut to later. Here's what they did when they were What? I thought I turned the audio off. God dang it. Here they're dragging people. Typical fucking fascist goon behavior. Dragging people around, but then look at this. Look at this shit. They're filming them and they're pulling people out of ICE's grasp. And they try to go in again, and the protesters actually start fighting. If you can believe it, this actually doesn't result in an escalation of violence because ICE is a bunch of fucking pussies. If they fail, they're not going to try again. In this instance, look at that. Y'all see that? ICE tried to arrest some protesters, but the other protesters pulled them out of there and fucking won a shoving match with the ICE agents. So they couldn't. They failed to arrest them, and now they're standing in a line there, and the protesters you can see have locked arms so that they can't go and tackle them individually, and they start advancing here. And I think this is where they kind of back up into this might like cut into this from earlier. Anyways, ICE agents tasing and assaulting people in the crowd, however, failing to arrest them as the crowd starts fighting back, then locking arms and advancing with chants of Nazi some and some interspersed, punch your own ticket early, dumbass. It's small. I know that stuff like this is small, right? And it's worth mentioning that like you don't always want to engage in the politics of catharsis, but holy shit, is stuff like this cathartic, right? This is a really good way to conduct like a small level protest, right? It looks like, yeah, the ICE agents here don't have any lethal weaponry on them. They have less lethal weaponry. I think these are like pellet or paintball guns or something like that. Violent crowd dispersal for sure, but you're not super likely to get killed. You will get hurt from one of these, but that means that like there's a little bit more leeway for you to act in solidarity with other protesters and sort of bear the brunt of the violence, if that makes sense. Either way, this is great to see because like the cops do frequently represent like, all right, the party's over, show's over, right? But it's not always the case. And this is the advantage of being in a group. This is the advantage of coalition building, of having strength in numbers, is that sometimes the state is a lot more fragile than it looks. Yeah, it shows that resistance is real. God, it doesn't even take that many of them. Like, it doesn't even take that many of you. How many people are here, right? If I could count how many like ICE agents are in this like mass of people, right? There's like only a couple dozen, right? At this detention facility. I don't know, maybe there's like 2 or 3 dozen ICE agents, and like at maximum there's about as many protesters. Yeah, it does, like, look, you can see in the area behind here, it doesn't look like there's that many people here. There's only a couple dozen protesters, a couple dozen ICE officers, and cops and stuff. But if you have like even so much as 10 people locking arms like this, like that's fucking again, cheesy mode activate. That's praxis. You locking arms with 9 other people makes you significantly stronger than all 10 of you individually. See, look, they've all locked arms. They are now like, they compose a single unit of people, and the cops are like, well, shit, we don't want to actually have to do that. What's going on? This is a protest outside of a detention facility in New Jersey where ICE attempted to and failed to arrest protesters because the protesters started fighting back, and one like they like engaged in a shoving match, after which the ICE agents were like forced to retreat. Here, I can play it from this point. You can see that ICE agents are wrestling people to the ground and assaulting them. But then look, ordinarily you kind of take it lying down, but every one of these people knows what's going on in that detention center, in that it's some shit so heinous that we don't like 100% know about it, if that makes sense. They know that some shit is going on in there. These are the guards for that like fucking super prison. And so they're pulling each other out of there. And then the ICE agents try to go in again, and they like, you know. But it's sort of like the protesters have already committed to like helping each other. Damn, they put woke in my white supremacy. Guantanamo Bay ass things going on in there. Yeah. Like each one of these federal detention facilities is like a a miniature Guantanamo Bay or whatever. And then look, all the protesters, even like including some of the people that were just wrestled to the ground, they get up, they lock arms, and then they start walking forward. You know? And I've turned off the audio because there is these people are chanting "kill yourself" to the ICE agents, and they also chant like Nazi scum and stuff. Look, in light of like how I just talked about that, like this fucking guy from this private security company that assassinated a Democratic politician and like had a massive hit list, including other politicians and like abortion care providers. It's good to be reminded that like good shit happens too, even if it's in contrast to an extremely dystopian environment that we're all like subject to. You know? I don't know. It's just I wanted to share that because this shit makes me have hope for the country. It like from a bottom up level, this makes me have hope for the country because it like it shows that people still care enough to put themselves on the line for each other. And then from the top down rather than the bottom up. I mean, I guess this is still even bottom up because Zoran Mamdani is you know, very grassroots candidate, very deep community connections. It's possible that this kind of movement is going to win the mayorship of New York City and basically like stab the Democratic Party in its stomach and watch them bleed out on their home turf, if that makes sense. You know? Something, the night is darkest just before the dawn. I don't know. Not trying to get too libbed up with it. But yeah. Like insane things are happening, but they could be insane in either direction of being based or being like, oh shit, it's actually all Jover. And this is that was like a little bit of the insane in favor of being base. Um, Related topic. I wanted to talk a little bit about this. Finally back home to my parents' house. I see. Hopefully they don't catch you or something. I don't know. They keep talking shit about the No Kings protest. They can talk shit all they want. The No Kings protest is a like objective victory both for liberals and the left against the right because the No Kings protest happened at the same time as and in reaction to the military parade that went on in DC. Nobody fucking cared about the military parade. Like if you, I'm sure if they're Trump supporters, they probably watched it or something like that. There was a fucking Coinbase sponsorship. The parade was just a like crypto grift with maybe a few thousand attendees. I'm not sure of the actual numbers, but like really the lawns and the malls in DC were looking awfully sparse for that military march. Meanwhile, the No Kings protest is objectively, we have, you know, numbers to this effect, the largest mass protest event in American history, surpassing the BLM protests in 2020, the March for Our Lives in 2018, the civil rights protests from the 50s and 60s. And now there are critiques to be had as to its effectiveness, but there's no question that it did basically what it sought to do, which is establish that like the fucking public despises Republicans, despises Donald Trump. The people are not on, you know, on the side of the right wing here. The people do not like Trump. The people do not like Republicans. The people do not like kings in this country. Doesn't matter if it's the Mad King himself, Donald Trump, or whether it's another Mad King like Stephen Miller propping up the Mad King, you know, like a sock puppet. They don't want that shit. They want democracy. and they're not getting it. So, shout outs to the No Kings protests. It's also an example of left liberal unity in this sort of political environment. To the fucking chagrin of every online liberal that made it their life's mission to attack the left, that like made it their life's mission to use the No Kings protests to try to excise the left from politics even further. Which was I don't know. It's kind of indicative of how liberalism, particularly in Europe, is like a joke ideology. But nonetheless, massive success, massive success from the perspective of a protest. Because there are different kind of protests that seek to accomplish different kinds of things. Going on strike is a form of protest. It's a very directed, disruptive form of protest. The No Kings protest did not need to be that, because it wasn't seeking to grind business to a halt to secure an increase in wages or anything like that nature. It was just meant to demonstrate mass approval or mass disapproval on a given issue. And the issue is the Republican Party and Donald Trump. And they demonstrated that mass disapproval. Hundreds of thousands of people in the biggest cities in America. I mean, for shit's sake, I had some friends on Twitter who live in like podunk rural towns out in like the fucking Great Plains that said that, yeah, our like Republican controlled little shithole of a town had a No Kings protest with 2,500 people, which is not an insignificant percentage of the whole town, I'm imagining. And likewise, if I look up some statistics here, look at this. No Kings protest attendance drew large crowds, over 5 million people. Yeah, the ACLU says that over 5 million people participated in these protests. Political organizing group Move On, who's a partner in the No Kings rallies, echoed the 5 million person estimate in a fundraising email. And numbers are going to be kind of fuzzy because it's a protest. People can kind of just show up if they know where it's going to be. New York Post reported 50,000 people in New York City. Again, numbers are going to be fuzzy, and some of these news outlets may have an incentive to sort of downplay the numbers, but this was massive. Largely peaceful. What did I even click on there? Anyways, that's from USA Today. To put this contrast in one succinct image, there we go. Trump's team claimed 250,000 supporters watched his military parade. No Kings protest drew at least 4 million. That's attendees. And now the consensus seems to be the baseline is at least 5 million. Oh, showed up. Okay. So 250,000 attendees versus 5 million attendees or more. Coughing baby versus hydrogen bomb. I'm telling you, the only reason R.I.P. Bozo. Of course, at the risk of alienating the tankies in my audience. So look, I know I'm more sympathetic to these people than most probably. Look, this isn't gonna bring about any sweeping change necessarily. It's not like, that's it, Trump, you're finished, you will never recover from this. No, it's just a show that like we don't like the government, right? And it demonstrates that the opposition has been squarely established between the state and the people. A state that is captured by capital. So, and I don't expect any right-wingers to be like convinced by any of this, but I do expect them to cry about it. And the crying about it is the intended effect. They should cry about it because they're losers. And we need to keep hammering that home through like demonstrations and effective social media campaigning, so that the right wing continues to be reminded that they are losers. Yeah, you know, because for the fucking 2 days that happened where like Tim Walz were like, wow, they're a bunch of weirdos, they were all shitting themselves. So those No Kings protests, they pretty alright actually. They pretty alright. Now let's go to something else that veterans of this channel will raise an eyebrow at. Here, hold on. MatPat Creators Caucus. True to form, the name of a like legislative coalition building group in the United States is called a caucus. Many such cases, not beating the homosexuality allegations, etc., etc. No, MatPat and some other YouTubers created the Creators Caucus. I saw this from like a couple. This was really weird because YouTube, as we know, has a very right-wing bias, and I heard of it not through MatPat's channel, but through other like second-order YouTube drama commentary channels that mostly like that tend to engage in like right-wing slop and whatever. And I feel like distinctly because of the recommendations I got once I clicked on one of the video, maybe to just hear a little bit about like what they were saying, details of this Creators Caucus. It really seemed like it was a vector for YouTube to feed me some more right-wing content, which of course is not going to work. Fuck you, YouTube. You shouldn't, if you wanted me to start consuming right-wing content, you shouldn't have given me the option to say not interested and don't recommend channel. That one's on you. Anyways, from MatPat's own account. New Quest, Washington, D.C. After 2 years of work, Steph and I have just launched the Creator Economy Caucus in the House of Representatives, a bipartisan group, emphasis on that word, I will come back to that later, where creators can work alongside lawmakers to ensure legislation is timely and relevant for the internet age. We've already got about 10 representatives on board, and we're just getting started. We'll eventually want to assemble creator advocates from around the country, so if you're interested in helping Washington understand our world, stay tuned here for more info. So, I don't doubt for one moment that MatPat's intentions here are good. But, you know what they say about the road to hell, right? I'm not saying he's making a mistake here, per se. In fact, if you want to affect positive change, something like this would be the way to do it, insofar as like trying to develop institutional inroads to power so that you can get people's ear in government and be like, hey, you should do this good thing that we've been campaigning for a long time. They're like, yes, maybe I will do that, because politicians are completely vacuous. The problem is in this little word right here, bipartisan. Now, if you're familiar with the U.S. party system, you know what the two parties are. And you know that one of them is committed to turning this country upside down, shaking it down, forcing trans people and queer people back into the closet. Legitimately, bipartisan should be a red flag, because if Republicans have their hand on this, they are going to use it for exactly those purposes. The most recent thing that Republicans got involved in that involved online legislation was a bill that would be capable of like being used as a pretty broad-ranging ban hammer to just eliminate queer content from the internet and to basically purge the internet of queer-friendly and queer-facing elements. That's what the Republicans get up to when they try to legislate anything regarding the internet, right? And then, of course, Democrats actually are incompetent, so they could use the help from somebody well-meaning like MatPat. But also, the Republicans already have connections with media outlets that are present in the online space. I think to the Republicans, this is just going to be an opportunity for them to capture more of the online discourse, right? And what worries me is that, MatPat sort of comes in intending to lobby the government to like do consumer protections online, basically, is the angle that I see him taking. And it all goes to shit because the Republicans are like, oh, great, an opportunity to fucking make queer kids kill themselves and also introduce mass surveillance on the internet and ban porn in every state. Because that seems to be what all the Republicans are interested in with regards to the internet. I don't like, genuinely, this is not a slight to Matt Pat. I don't see anything good really coming of this. I do see things coming of this, but nothing good. Although I do appreciate the Matt Pat politics arc. I do actually genuinely have to wonder if Matt Pat saw my video dissecting his like critique of YouTube and his analysis of Trump's campaign and was like, oh, maybe I am pretty good at politics. Look, that's getting a little bit into main character syndrome territory. Don't gas me up on that one. But yeah, I thought it worth mentioning. That's just a theory, a politics theory. In before he reads Rosa Luxemburg, like actual politics theory. Nope, stop. Let's not put the cart before the horse here. I think he even made a channel here. Hold on. That's not what I wanted
pleasure meeting you.
Do. Sorry, you may have heard like 1 second of Hassan interviewing Jean-Luc Mélenchon. That's, for whatever reason, when I typed in YouTube, that autofilled in the URL bar. Matt Pat Politics. Matt Pat is now running for president. Okay, these are... See, look at this. These are the kind of channels that I got, like, recommended in the... This is the one that I ended up clicking on. It was, like, on my home feed, and I saw that, like, is Matt Pat running for president? And I was like, ain't no way. 1v3 made like a passing joke about this. And I was like, dude, that would actually be really funny if that became real. Like 2028 ended up being like the YouTube presidency. Anyways, why? Okay. Thank you, YouTube fucking search function. Great. Really cool, actually. Yeah, no, okay. So this, and the titles like this, it seemed were basically clickbait. Because it seems like what he's doing is just creating this this creators caucus. Reagan was a movie star before becoming a president. Yeah, that's right. He was a screen actor. In fact, he was a member of the Screen Actors Guild and sold out his fucking comrades in the union to the feds. Reagan was a union man that betrayed his union and then cracked down on unions. That is his legacy. Nobody remembers any of the movies that he was in. Yeah, I don't know. Look, I feel like what the politically intelligent move to do here is to get lawmakers on board with this first. And then once you have enough of them that you've got your foot in the door in Congress, start advocating for shit that the Republicans really hate, but that is so unambiguously good that the most they can do is be like, you're woke or something, actually. Legitimately, okay, I think the biggest opportunity that this presents, because Congress doesn't fucking work anymore. Congress doesn't do jack shit except put a rubber stamp on whatever the administration wants to do at this point, right? Like, this presents, if anything, an opportunity to radicalize people online to the left, right? This, like, if anything, I feel like this is an opportunity for you to present good shit to Congress, have them reject it, and then tell your audience, wow, Congress really fucking sucks. You know? Like, I don't know if Matt Pat will be capable of that. You need to be willing to be blatantly partisan from the left while doing something like this. And when I say from the left, keep in mind, I don't mean the Democratic Party because, you know, I hate the Democratic Party, not because I'm on the same side as Republicans, but because they're on the same side as Republicans. There is no real left representation in American government. You have to be willing to be hostile from the left to both the Democratic and Republican parties, but particularly the Republican Party when they won't even signal that they maybe support a thing that you're doing. You know, and that presents an opportunity precisely because MatPat has an online platform of millions of people, young people especially, who are going to be introduced to politics in the coming years. you know, if they haven't been already. And like, it seems like small peanuts in a sea of YouTube content and in a sea of online content that's geared towards the right wing grift cycle. But legitimately, like, yeah, like you gotta start somewhere with fighting against the right wing propaganda machine with basically a left wing propaganda machine, but without even some of the more pejorative elements of the term propaganda. Because yes, you're weaving a narrative. All media is propaganda because it has a certain political preference and narrative that it maybe leans towards one way or the other. All media is biased. You don't have to lie. You don't have to say anything untrue. You might have to say things that are true but inconvenient, but you don't have to like make shit up the way that Republicans do in order to effectively push a given narrative about how politics works. You know? Does that make sense? I don't know. This could be something bad. It could be kind of nothing, or it could be something really, really good. But I think the chances of it being really, really good are basically contingent on MatPat understanding the mechanics of manufacturing consent and using media as a platform to influence people to think a certain way. And if you're introducing that to politics, if you're combining your YouTube platform and politics, buddy, you got to be willing to tell your audience which politics you're preferential towards one way or the other, you know? Because if he goes the centrist route, that is how all relevance and like political effectiveness dies. The Democratic Party signed its own death warrant in the 1980s and 90s with the shift towards neoliberalism and Bill Clinton. That's when the Republicans really started embracing populism with Newt Gingrich, with Paul Ryan, with Donald Trump. That was all the 90s, the 2000s, and the 2010s. You know? The Republicans realized we got to move further right and embrace a language that is critical of the elite in order to appeal to a base of people that's increasingly disillusioned. Institutionalism is a failing modality of politics. You know? I don't know. Look, I want to believe in my boy MatPat. I will be parasocial for him. Fuck it. Because I've reacted to some of his videos, and he seems like a very politically intelligent person, even though he wasn't officially involved in politics before, you know, this right here. I don't know. I don't know. And of course, like, people saying, you said all media is biased. Does that include you? Fuck yeah, it does. I'm a socialist. I make no secrets about that. I make no excuses or apologies about my own politics. I don't try to hide it in any way. Like, for shit's sake, look at this down in the bottom left here. Look at my camera frame. It has a fucking red circle and a yellow star on it. Look at that right there. You think I'm hiding anything about my politics? No. You have to be willing to be bold in ways that could really, you know, that could really upset people that might donate money to you. You know, not necessarily online, but like in real life when, you know, politicians are all going to these fucking fancy dinners and shit. You can't try to, integrate into the institution in a way that would like compromise, that. I don't know. Look, I'm kind of waffling. I want this to be good, but I genuinely don't think it has a very big chance of being good. Yeah. Although I must say, if MatPat is setting up for a presidential run, this would be the way to do it. This would kind of be like what you have to do. Uh, uh, he would definitely win the millennial vote by a fucking landslide if he ran for president. Nation's first independent president, YouTuber. God, that would be funny. I don't think that's actually gonna happen, but yeah. Anyways, I'm not gonna tell MatPat to read theory. That's where I'll draw the line. I want leftism to be accessible to people. That's part of the problem that the left has been facing. Not the biggest part of the problem, but a significant part of it. So I think that's probably all I'll say about that. Beware of fucking Congress people bearing gifts or something. If that's a segment, cut it. But I don't think I'm gonna make that a segment. I don't know. I might, if I have some more thoughts on it, I might come back to it later, like on another stream, and maybe I might even make it directed to Matt Pat. Although again, main character syndrome shit. Uh, I don't know what else I even want to talk about today. Oh yeah, actually, there was one thing that I thought about going back to. I'm not going to pull up any articles or anything for it. You guys remember when that audio leaked of the argument that occurred between David Hogg and the DNC chair Ken Martin? How like David Hogg was like, yeah, we need to put Democratic Party resources behind challengers, candidates that are willing to challenge really ineffective Democrats that haven't been able to effectively combat the Republican Party or make any meaningful gains, so that we can get progressives in office that are capable of putting the Republicans on the back foot electorally for once, right? He said, all right, I now have a hand in running the DNC, so I'm going to be anti-incompetence. Get all the fucking incompetent ass Democrats out of there, get young progressives in there, and make it happen, basically. Beyond that, he hasn't offered too many specifics, probably because he was worried about navigating through the internal machinery of the DNC. But it actually did come to a head with Ken Martin, who was the chair, and David Hogg was the co-chair. They fell out over it. They had an argument, and Ken Martin fucking cried. Like, David Hogg bullied Ken Martin hard enough to make him cry, which I think is based, because he didn't even say anything particularly egregious that I am aware of, aside from, you're not helping, you're keeping the Democratic Party in a state of decline, there's too many incompetent Democrats in seats of power, we need to get them out of there. He didn't even call Ken Martin incompetent by name, but Ken Martin knew that applied to him too. So he cried about it. And then the DNC fired David Hogg. Like he was offering compromises, and they refused the compromises. He was trying to be diplomatic, phrasing it in such a way that it would like maybe provide some opportunity, like, hey, if you get on board with this, we don't need to primary you. Nothing doing, right? What genuinely got me thinking was the fact that Ken Martin seemed to genuinely be having like an existential crisis, like a crisis of faith, because a fucking guy who's like basically my age. Keep in mind, David Hogg is 25. He's only a year older than me. He was the co-chair of the Democratic National Committee. The Democratic National Committee. That is the national branch arm of the Democratic Party, the largest political party in the United States, in the history of the United States. It might not seem like it, but it is. And Ken Martin was like so hurt by this that he cried. This guy's the chair of that party, and the co-chair only had to say, yeah, we need to get incompetent Democrats out of office so we can get competent Democrats in, and he cried about it. Because he was like, I'm trying so hard, man. In parentheses, he isn't. Anyways, that genuinely made me think, I actually do feel like if David Hogg pressed the issue, he would be chair of the DNC right now. Like, the Democrats are so weak and so feckless and so, like, close to, if they're genuine. If they're not genuine, they'll just, like, I don't know, kick you out, have you arrested, whatever. Like, the Chuck Schumer types. But the people who did actually start from a position of wanting to make a positive difference in the world are so breakable that I genuinely think in that situation, if you're David Hogg, you're talking with Ken Martin, I think you just need to take the chains off and bully him harder, and he would genuinely, like, leave the room crying, and you would be the boss now. Like, I actually think that, like, look, you serve zero purpose in this party. You suck. You're a slave to the donor class. You have done nothing. You claim to have 14 years of experience, and this party has done nothing under your leadership. You say you don't have your sea legs, and it's been 100 days. You're worthless. Get the fuck out of my sight. I'm the boss now. I'm going to turn this party around because clearly you have no intention of doing so. I genuinely think if you said something like that, maybe, you know, in a little bit meaner of a tone than I did, maybe with a little bit more clever wordplay mixed in, if you did that as David Hogg, I genuinely think you would be the chair of the Democratic Party right now. And like the party might be in a position to turn itself around. Because that is how weak the Democrats are. And of course, part of me knows that it's kind of pointless to speculate, right? But I think that, you know, you can apply sort of a similar principle, bullying the Democrats into submission. That works from the left's perspective as well. A lot of the, like, Democrats are so feckless that the only reason they have any staying power is because of inertia from the existence of that institution, the Democratic Party, for so long. If you know, either construct the illusion or otherwise convince them that no, you don't actually have that power because you're not using it and you have no intention to use it, you sort of call their bluff like that, I genuinely think they'd be like, damn, you're right, I don't actually have that power. I'm just a small little guy and I'm powerless. And then you're like, all right, great, now I'm the boss now. Go fucking tell everybody else that I'm the boss now. I'm turning this thing around. You know? This exact thing isn't what's happening in New York, but I think it's something pretty similar, where the Democratic Party has had, for the longest time, this hegemonic control over national politics within the liberal left sort of bloc from the seat of New York, and had hegemonic control over New York State from within New York. That started being chipped away during the 2024 election, when the campaign they ran was so bad that Trump actually made significant gains in blue states. You know, that I attribute, at least in part, to the failures of the Democratic Party, to their weakness. And now the Democratic Party is so weak, it can't even keep its own members and its own typical voter base, its own like base of support in line, because Zoran Mamdani is leading Andrew Cuomo. This is the most powerful Democrat in the most powerful nexus of Democratic Party power, and he's losing because it turns out all you have to do is lead an effective social media campaign, call him a rapist, and pretend that power structure doesn't exist. And because the Democrats already don't know how to use that power structure to their advantage, congratulations, it basically doesn't exist. You know, if you're Zoran Mamdani, you know, we'll see what the results of the election are soon enough, but congrats, you've bullied the Democrats into submission from the left. Yeah, quite a timeline indeed, you know? And you know, like I said last stream when I was talking about Mamdani and his very real chances of winning, I think this does actually present a genuine opportunity for something good, for like turning the Democratic Party around in the long run, taking it from the like liberal what is it, fact post kind of third way liberalism of the 90s and early 2000s that has done nothing but fail repeatedly in the face of ever more radical conservatism, and turn it into a coalition of like your Working Families Party, Justice Democrat, Sunrise Movement, you know, Union Democrat, grassroots, dirt road Democrat types. There are a lot of different like political organizing groups on the left in this country. They've all had to operate under the Democratic umbrella in a way that I think really neuters them, you know, because they can't, in addition to trying to fight the Republican Party effectively in, you know, at the local level or whatever level they operate, they also have to operate in such a way that they're not stepping on the toes of Democratic leadership, that they're not being too based or too effective or too left-wing, you know? If he wins, he'll be the first socialist to win in a while. Oh yeah, he would for sure be the first socialist to win in a long time. And it would be a massive departure from how America has treated socialists in this country. Now, there's a book that I read. It's kind of like an intro book to socialism in America. It's like the S word or something like that. It's like a history, a short like pop history of socialism in America. Mostly they talk about like candidates and stuff, right? Such as Eugene Debs, who ran for president from prison in the 1910s, I think, and won something like 1 million votes. It was a pretty impressive showing from a prison cell as a socialist. This was one of the like early incarnations of the Red Scare. But then there was a congressperson that was elected, or would be congressperson, I should say, that was elected. I forget if it was on a Democratic, Republican, Independent, or nominally socialist ticket. I think it was under the Democratic Party, but don't quote me on that. It was one of the Midwestern states, like either Wisconsin or Minnesota or something. And they ran for Congress and they won. And then Congress didn't let him take his seat. Like Congress just operated down a seat because they were like, we don't like the guy that won the election. We're going to send him back there so he can't be sworn into Congress. And they created all these like different contrivances and whatever so that eventually he just like wasn't allowed to take office even after winning the election. Like unquestionably he won the election. I think they even held the election again and he won again and they still didn't let him take office. In fact, let me see. Do I have that book on my shelf over here? No, I do not, unfortunately. Okay, it's probably down in the library somewhere. The details of that story aren't so much as important as the change in attitude, which is what I wanted to illustrate with that anecdotal example, right? Because there's no indication, number one, that the Democratic Party would try a similar thing if Mamdani were to win this primary election, or number two, if they did try it, that it would work. You know, I think this might even be a sign that we're the Cold War between the United States and USSR or whatever is far enough in the past that people are going to open up to socialism as a concept again. You know, right-wingers are still going to use dirty commie and socialist or whatever as an insult because they have no brains, and if they do have a brain, they just principally oppose to the objectives of socialism, which is democracy and egalitarianism, you know, and rights, you know, thank you, because they hate things that are good. But it's not going to have the same kind of impact that neocons saying that in the 20th century had. Because in the 20th century, you know, while we still have some version of this in the modern media ecosystem, it really was the case that the entire media apparatus in the United States had the same line, and that was communism and socialism are bad. Whatever differences they had between them, there was an uber consistent line that got parroted over and over and over and over and over again. That socialism is bad, that you know, communism is bad, right? And now there are a lot of media outlets today, in fact, all of them still adhere to a pretty similar line, that they are very like critical of the left, and they really don't like the left. They don't want the left to win, but there's not the kind of ideological discipline that would lead to them straightforwardly saying socialism bad, communism bad, because those things aren't really present as credible threats or talking points anymore. Does that make sense? Mamdani's polling at 29%. I thought I saw a poll that indicated he was higher. No, hold on. So run Mamdani polling. No, we looked at a poll last night. Here, last time that showed he was at more than that. Yeah, look. This is from 5 days ago. Mamdani surges in new poll, leading Cuomo for first time, 35 to 31%. This might be a bad poll, but it is at least a real poll. Let me see if I can find another one, too. So we got that one. Chances soar, that's 3 days ago. Dog, Newsweek, what are you cooking? That's Polymarket, not an actual... Okay. Emerson polling? This is from May 28th, so this is before the debate even. Hmm. 7 days ago. I can't find anything more recent than that. Do you have a link for that poll, Bro the Boss? Latest. Oh, wait. Hold on. New York Times. Latest polls. All right. Let's take a look at this. Ranked choice first. Okay, this is an important caveat. All pollsters, selected pollsters. Okay. All pollsters for the first round. So this is when there are like a bunch of different candidates on the ballot. You have to rank first, second, third, fourth, and fifth. And there's still room for candidates that aren't even ranked, which means they don't get votes at all. Let's see. Honan Strategies, Oran is at 25%. Expedition, 30%. Public Policy Polling, 35%. Data for Progress, 33%. Emerson College, 23%. Workbench Strategies, 27%. Honan Strategy, 26%. Marist Poll. Cuomo breaks 50% in fifth round. This is from May 14th. This is outdated by over a month. A lot has happened in the past month. 2 months ago, Mamdani didn't even breach 20%. He's not polling at 29%. He was polling at 29% a month ago. There's a big difference in that, given to the ramp up in these electoral campaigns. This is from 3 hours ago. Survey USA, 11%. Marist, 22%. May 1st. Oh, wait, hold on. These are showing fucking dates from way out of date. Here, hold on. May 14th, 18th, February. Okay. Yeah, look at this. The more recent polls have him at higher numbers. Look at these polls in early June and trending back to late May. They all have Zoran either approaching or above 30% in the first round. Then look, as you go back further, you get into May, April, March, and February, and the numbers get smaller because less people knew about him. The campaign hadn't been going on for as long. Let's look at the final round. These still have Cuomo at plus 12 from earlier in June. This is before the debate even happened. The debate recently that happened, none of this accounts for the recent mayoral race debate where all the candidates up there basically took turns dunking on Cuomo and Mamdani had like a really good performance. This is more recent than all these. This is from June 11th. The most recent thing on here is June 5th to 9th, and then June 6th to 7th, June 3rd to 7th. These have Mamdani at like 20 to 30% in the first round. These have him at like 40-some% in the final round. This has him at 35%. Look, like I've said, polling is the devil. The variations are going to be fucking insane. Some of these might not even be real polls. They might be like AI conducted polls where they auto-generate respondents based on like vibes or whatever. But some of these are real. And there's going to be variation between them either way. The point is, look at, okay, if we do this chronologically, look at the numbers back here. You had maybe one poll indicating Zoran reaching 20%. Other than that, he's in the teens, 10 or even less earlier this year, in February, in March, in April. Now, look at the change when you go through the month of May and now June. 25, 30, 35%. Another notable thing about all of these, this is before the AOC endorsement. AOC endorsed Zoran Mamdani for mayor recently. None of these polls were conducted after that happened. Hell, even this one from June 11th, I think occurred before... this news happened after the endorsement. The survey might have even happened before then. Let's look at the survey. Yeah, look at this. June 6th to 7th. Wait, no, that would be the day after. Silly me. Hold on. 9 Democrats faced off. The following day, June 5th, AOC endorses Mamdani. Okay. So we're going to see... This is very soon after the fact. We're going to see a lagging effect of this. If any polls come out between now and the election, I would be surprised if they still show Cuomo as winning in the final round, actually. Continuing to be a narrow 2-person contest between Mamdani and Cuomo. I read this article another time, and it made me mad for other reasons, but yeah. That much is true. Either way, this is actually... Brother. I was gonna say it's kind of hard to get polling data out of a local election like this, even for a city as big as New York, you know? Uh New York Times editorial board. Mamdani doesn't deserve spot on New Yorkers' ballots. Who the fuck are you? Excuse me? Are you the population of New York? You get to decide that shit? I don't think so, motherfucker. Jesus. And of course, it's the editorial board. See, this is the everything wrong with the news in like a fucking single headline. Editorial board of a well-established newspaper. The people that are making the fucking newsroom decisions and deciding what the narrative is, and definitely have like shares in the company and like have their financial livelihood tied to the success of the paper and shit like that. Yeah, we don't think the people should get to decide this guy should be mayor. Literally an anti-democratic take from the New York Times. Bro, they did a disendorsement. Holy shit. They are so afraid that this guy is going to win, which makes me very hopeful that he might. Elite progressives? Oh my god. This fucking New York Times editorial is about to be the worst thing I've ever seen. Not biased at all. Yeah, me when I am not biased and definitely don't have a political preference. We do not believe that Mr. Mamdani deserves a spot on New Yorkers' ballots. His experience is too thin. Me when I'm making a fucking you shouldn't be allowed to be a politician if you've never been a politician before argument. This agenda reads like a turbocharged version of Mr. de Blasio's dismaying mayoralty. Mayoralty. Bit of a I would genuinely consider this a Freudian slip. The proper term here, by the way, is mayorship. Oh my god. As for Mr. Cuomo, we have serious objections to his ethics and conduct, even if he would be better for New York's future than Mr. Mamdani. So on the one hand, rent control, free buses, and like city-owned grocery stores. On the other hand, mass death of elders, exploitation of Medicaid and cutting medical services, and sexually assaulting a bunch of women. I think that's better for New York's future than free buses. Personally, what the fuck are they on, dude? Oh my god, it is actually unhinged how much these people hate Mamdani. Bro, oh my god, this argument. Board criticized Mamdani's lack of experience and policy proposals, saying he too often ignores the unavoidable trade-offs of governments. Their argument is literally he wants to do good things and isn't willing to do bad things. Brother, you are just cartoon villains. It argued his calls for rent freezes could restrict the housing supply. Fucking how? Next, they'll just be like, you are Hamas. They already did that during the debate. Rejected his support for government-run grocery stores and accused him of minimizing the importance of police. Based? Excuse me? People fucking hate the cops. The only reason that people support the cops is because they've been told by news networks they should support the cops. Anybody who, like, isn't subject to that narrative, hook, line, and sinker, anybody who hasn't had that repeated into their thick skull, or, like, anybody that isn't strictly a part of that like hardline centrist camp fucking despises the cops. It's even like a mainstream liberal position at this point that the cops fucking suck. Democrats are trying to sabotage him? Oh, absolutely. Like I said, they are piss scared that he's gonna win. Ugh. Most like fucking sensical argument from the news. They're slang terms for the police for a reason, lol. Yeah, that's true. The fuzz. Also, cop is an acronym. It stands for I learned this a few years ago. COP is an acronym that stands for Constable on Patrol. How can we elect this guy to government if he's never been elected to government before? Clearly, we need to choose the institutional insider that has proven experience in sexually assaulting women. Thank you. Great. Thank you, New York Times. I actually appreciate that, like, The Hill is saying, yo, check out what the fucking New York Times editorial board said about this guy. A lot of stuff being put in quotes here. You know what's funny though? I think this guy, Comptroller Brad Lander, is this the guy that I think it is? Hold on. Who's this? Yeah, like, look, see this guy that they're talking about? The editorial states City Comptroller Brad Lander, who's been among the next tier of candidates in polling, is an alternative to Cuomo and Mamdani. They're saying, like, the New York editorial board even knows, the New York Times editorial board even knows that endorsing Cuomo is fucking toxic and would torpedo their ability to sabotage Mamdani in the race. So they're like, we'll endorse Comptroller Brad Lander, who's not a bad choice, but it would effectively make it so that Mamdani is less likely to win. If it weren't for the fact, because I recognize this guy, him and Mamdani recently did a video where they co-endorsed each other. Seriously, this guy, like, they did a video where, like, hey, if you're voting me for first choice, vote for him for second choice. So, like, this guy did a campaign video with Zohran Mamdani. You know, they both, like, uploaded to their social media where they said, if you vote for Brad Lander as first choice, put Zohran Mamdani as second choice. If you vote for Zohran Mamdani as first choice, put Brad Lander as second choice. So they're fucking turning this disendorsement from the New York Times on its head to be like, actually, what if we said fuck you and this made it more likely that I win, actually. Sick. And at the same time, ooh, this gives me so much life and joy in my heart and schadenfreude to see my enemies burn with their own political incompetence. Recently, Zohran Mamdani actually co-opted the language of abundance, which is really funny. Yeah, genuinely, it does sound like a Simpsons skit. Oh, that guy that wants good things? What a national embarrassment. We need a well-established, respectable sexual predator to save us from the incompetence of somebody who wants better bus service. Ridiculous. Let me see this. Where I know this post is somewhere in the history of shit that I saw. Zohran Mamdani's campaign actually started to co-opt the language. Here's something else that's really funny. Co-opt the language of abundance. By the way, The Atlantic now posting an editorial to call for fucking regime change in New York City because Mamdani's about to win. Thank you. Now let me go back to looking for this other thing. Zohran Mamdani actually, his campaign co-opted the language of the abundance libs to say, like, hey guys, there's enough to go around, and they sort of flipped that on its head to say, but it's being fucking hoarded by landlords and the 1%, so we need to redistribute that shit so that we all get to enjoy it, right? Whereas the abundance libs are like, hey, there's enough to go around, so just let the, you know, the oligarchs and the fucking landlords all have whatever they want, because there's still enough to go around. Look, here's a clip. Let me come back to this. Sorry. Oh, I thought this was a video. It might be. Zohran Mamdani says at this campaign event. By the way, he's fucking filling like theaters and event spaces now. Like, everybody loves this guy. Government must deliver an agenda of abundance that puts the 99% over the 1%. See, this is what I mean. Co-opting the abundance fucking rhetoric. The left should really just ignore Klein, Iglesias, etc., and co-opt abundance to mean tax the rich, deprioritize their preferences, fight their corruption. Yes! I love this shit. Finally. Oh my god, it's so good. He's so fucking good at this, dude. This is one of those things. It's like, oh shit, if this guy wins, there's actually hope for this country. If he wins, if he sticks to the shit that's been winning, and he like keeps doing, his progressive king shit, and like keeps coalition building with the fucking working family party, all that shit, America is in for like something good for once. New York City might be livable again. And if he doesn't win, I'm actually going to like start tweaking. Fucking gas station tweakers will have nothing on what I'm about to experience and go through if this guy loses. But yeah, and for those not in on the lore, the deep cut, Ezra Klein and Matt Iglesias are like these weirdo neoliberalism. They are like the high priests of modern neoliberalism. They're like the rhetorical vanguard of it. There was a book published a little while ago called Abundance or something, which was basically like, oh wow, there's so many resources in society, so we should like, I don't know, do some yimby shit, right? Like it was a pretty nothing book, but a lot of I think there were some people that have inroads with the Democratic establishment that effectively use that as a lever to push the abundance agenda, which is just neoliberalism again. They took the book and sort of twisted it into, we want deregulation actually, because you would have to change local regulations around zoning to allow for the construction of more stuff. So they warped that into a broader fucking Reaganite deregulation agenda, and they're saying like, you stupid fucking lefties, actually the path to prosperity is the exact same fucking thing that has hollowed out the United States for 40 years, you fucking moron. When is the election? Let me find that out. New York City mayor primary. Democratic mayoral primary. Here we go. June 24th. It is in 8 days. Oh boy. Oh boy. Oh boy. Take place on June 24th to select the Democratic nominee for mayor of New York City in the 2025 New York City mayoral election. Now, keep in mind, because the Democratic Party has such a strong grasp over the state of New York and the city of New York, the Democratic primary election for the New York mayor is effectively the real election for the New York mayor, right? Like, nobody really runs on the Republican ticket in New York City. Republicans in New York City run as Democrats. It's kind of the same thing that happens where I live. A lot of Republicans will run as Democrats just so they will have a chance at winning. Eric Adams was one such example. Bro is like well, maybe he is a Democrat, but like he was a cop and supported the fucking tough on crime shit and like the surveillance state, and also took bribes from Turkey, you know? And it was doing some crazy like the West is over, society has fallen because there are too many immigrants or something like that. I don't know. He's like, this is where you get a lot of the pro-Trump Democrats, because you can't really be a Republican and win in New York City. So yeah, June 24th. That's the date to remember for this one. Are you going to stream during the vote? I might. What day is that on the calendar? That is a Tuesday? Maybe. I wonder, I don't know what time the votes are going to be counted. If it's that evening, I might stream. Votes typically get counted on the evening of an election, but yeah. This is why I like to see the two main parties more as talent agencies than actual parties. That's probably a pretty good way of putting it, yeah. Because in Europe, what a lot of political parties have in common is that they're members of internationals. The political parties of Europe much more resemble actual parties, political parties and political orgs, than those in the United States. And to a certain extent, I think Britain as well. I've seen this, particularly if you pay attention to the Labour Party, right? Yeah, the Democrats and the Republicans are both nominally big tent parties, which means they could theoretically represent a range of different ideologies, right? So in a way, yeah, it's like a talent agency where you kind of have to cozy up to one or the other, regardless of what your political beliefs are, so that you have a shot in politics, right? Whereas in Europe, it's kind of straightforward that like your a political party would be more or less representative of your ideology, because there are enough political parties to capture most of the ideological representation that is present in a given country. Even though, I would say that there's only like three real ideologies: fascism, liberalism, and socialism, right? But every country in Europe, for the most part, has parties that represent those three major groups, plus a few more to get like a little bit more specific. But yeah, in the United States, you only have those two. And the real political parties, I think, in the United States are more like the Working Families Party and the Sunrise Movement and these groups that do more activist work at the local and state level, right? And they are much less powerful than the two main political parties. Man, it really does seem like it's kind of the uniparty, you know? To use the talent agency comparison, the simile of talent agencies. Yeah, I guess, if you're going into Hollywood, if you're going into acting, you do kind of have to contact a talent agency or something like that, You can't just really be an actor and go it alone. You have to have that institutional connection. Nonetheless, this has, I think, been a good stream. I waffled a lot. That is characteristic. I don't know what, if anything, I want to make segments out of. Maybe I don't know. No, you know what? What's really convenient is that I talked about Mamdani last stream as well. So I could kind of combine the parts from last stream and the parts from this stream where I talk about him and make that into one segment. Here, look, I can even write that down. Look at that. That actually makes editing for me a lot easier. Also, June 16th stream. Great, cool. So yeah, maybe I'll make that into a segment. I think I do kind of have to make a segment out of the whole like fucking Democratic Party officials got assassinated. I wish my thoughts on that were more refined. I think it has something to do with like the weather's shit, so my brain is really scrambled. That does have like a profound effect on my thought process on days like this, is I feel a lot less coherent, a lot more scrambled. If I feel I need to come back when maybe the dust has settled a little bit and I feel like I can offer more of a straight line of thought, maybe I'll do that, and then that will be the segment. But either way, I'm gonna go raid somebody now. I don't know how long I'm gonna do the just chatting sort of live stream. I definitely want to like stream Mario Kart World if/when I get a Nintendo Switch 2, but I don't know if I'll go back to streaming like Mario Kart Wii before then, Maybe I don't know. It would either be Mario Kart Wii or like Super Smash Bros. Because there's a tournament coming up that I wanted to practice for. In any case, Hank Pecker, the Hasanabi broadcast is live. Okay.
It's debunked.
So I'm gonna raid Hassan. No, that fucking keyboard doesn't let me type. Okay, raid Hasanabi. All right. I'll see y'all next time. And have a good one.